They say love conquers all. That if you hold on long enough, if you sacrifice enough, if you stay patient enough, love will eventually soften what hurts. But what if sometimes love isn't what keeps you there? What if it's fear? What if it's history? What if it's the quiet belief that tomorrow will finally feel different? There is a silent reality many people live inside. Relationships that appear stable on the outside, yet feel painfully lonely within. Smiles in photographs, shared routines, familiar governits. And yet, a strange emptiness that lingers in the space between two people. Why do some people stay long after the warmth has faded? Why does the heart cling to what no longer nourishes it? And why does leaving sometimes feel more terrifying than staying? This is not a story about weakness. It is a story about attachment, identity, fear, and the invisible chains that can disguise themselves as love. Let's begin. There is a moment, small and almost invisible, when something inside you begins to whisper. It does not shout. It does not accuse. It simply feels different. You sit across from someone you once couldn't wait to see, and the silence feels heavier than it should. Conversations that once moved effortlessly now feel careful, measured. You laugh, but the laughter does not reach as deeply as it used to. At first you dismiss it. Every relationship has phases. Every couple settles. This is what maturity looks like. But stability and emotional distance are not the same thing. There is a loneliness that only exists beside someone. Not the loneliness of being alone, but the loneliness of not being understood. You begin to notice how often you filter your thoughts, how often you swallow disappointment, how often you tell yourself, it's not that bad. And that sentence becomes comforting. At least they are not worse. At least they still care in their own way. At least you are not alone. Hope becomes selective. Memory becomes edited. The mind highlights the good days and gently softens the painful ones. You call the heaviness normal. You call the quiet peace. But love should not feel like erosion. Slowly, almost invisibly, you begin shrinking. Your needs feel negotiable. Your standards soften. You adapt more than you express. And somewhere inside, a question forms. Is this really enough? The recognition does not arrive dramatically. It appears in small moments. In the way your body tenses before certain conversations. In the way you hesitate before sharing something vulnerable. In the way you feel a quiet relief when you are alone. Relief. That gentle exhale when the door closes behind them. That is often the first honest signal. And deep down you already know. You just haven't allowed yourself to name it. Staying rarely begins in adulthood. It begins much earlier. In childhood homes where love was inconsistent. In families where conflict meant silence. In environments where approval had to be earned. If love once required endurance, then discomfort can feel familiar. If affection was unpredictable, warm one day, distant the next, the nervous system may have learned to chase connection rather than expect stability. Intermittent affection can feel intoxicating because it resembles what was once survived. Some children learned that love meant caretaking, that being good meant being quiet, that harmony required self-sacrifice. Those children grow into adults who confuse tolerance with devotion. And so staying feels responsible. Leaving feels like abandonment. Sometimes it is not the partner you are afraid to lose. It is the identity you built around being needed, around being loyal, around never giving up. Familiar pain can feel safer than unfamiliar freedom, because at least familiar pain is predictable, and predictability feels like control. Beneath emotion there is biology. Attachment is not just a feeling. It is chemistry. When affection is inconsistent, loving one day, distant the next, the brain responds with powerful patterns. Dopamine spikes during reconciliation. Oxytocin strengthens bonds after conflict. The relief of closeness feels amplified after tension. This pattern is known as intermittent reinforcement. The rare good days feel like proof. The apologies feel meaningful. The affection feels earned. But what if what feels like intensity is simply relief? There is also the weight of time, the belief that because you have invested years, memories, shared experiences, it would be wasteful to walk away. You remember how it began. You remember promises. You remember the version of both of you that once felt hopeful. And the mind whispers, you've come this far. But time invested does not guarantee fulfillment. Trauma bonds can form when pain and affection coexist. The nervous system becomes conditioned to associate emotional chaos with connection. Calm may feel unfamiliar. Intensity may feel like love. Leaving would not only mean losing a person, it would mean disrupting a chemical rhythm your body has grown used to. And disruption feels frightening. So the brain rationalizes. It reframes. It softens reality. Hope becomes a coping strategy. And coping can look a lot like commitment. Inside you there is a quiet war. One voice says, "This hurts." Another says, "But what if it gets better?" You defend the relationship to others. You minimize your disappointments. You question your own sensitivity. Because admitting unhappiness can feel like admitting failure. If you chose this person, what does it say about you if it is not working? Cognitive dissonance creates tension. The discomfort of holding two conflicting truths. To reduce that discomfort, the mind adjusts the narrative. You tell yourself you are overthinking. You tell yourself every couple struggles. You tell yourself gratitude should be enough. And gradually you become divided. The part of you that longs for emotional safety, and the part that fears losing everything. This internal conflict is exhausting. It may show up as anxiety, as irritability, as numbness. Not because the relationship is always dramatic, but because your inner truth is being silenced. And silencing yourself requires effort. Your body knows. It knows the tightness in your chest, the heaviness after certain conversations, the hesitation before expressing needs. The conflict is not just between you and them. It is between you and yourself. Leaving is rarely just about leaving a person. It is about stepping into uncertainty. Who will you be without them? What if you regret it? What if loneliness feels worse? Predictability, even painful predictability, can feel safer than the unknown. There may be practical fears, financial concerns, social judgment, cultural expectations, the idea that starting over is failure. But often the deepest fear is identity loss. For years you were someone's partner, someone's constant, someone's role. Without that role, who are you? So you stay. Because staying maintains structure. It maintains routine. It maintains familiarity. Even if the familiarity feels hollow. Fear builds invisible walls. Not around the relationship, but around your sense of possibility. And those walls can feel safer than freedom. Clarity does not always arrive in chaos. Sometimes it arrives in quiet exhaustion. You grow tired of convincing yourself. Tired of negotiating with reality. Tired of shrinking to maintain peace. There is a subtle shift. You stop asking, "How do I fix this?" and begin asking, "What is this costing me?" That question changes everything. You begin observing instead of defending. You notice patterns without excusing them. You feel the cost, in your energy, your self-esteem, your joy. Awareness expands. And once you see the erosion clearly, denial becomes harder to maintain. This clarity is not dramatic. It is steady. It does not demand immediate action. It simply refuses to look away. And sometimes that refusal is the beginning of healing. Healing is not loud. It is not about sudden courage. It is about remembering yourself, rediscovering the parts of you that felt muted, rebuilding boundaries that once felt selfish, understanding that love should not require self-abandonment. You realize that staying was not stupidity. It was attachment. It was hope. It was fear. It was history. You forgive yourself for enduring. And slowly, you begin understanding that emotional safety is not too much to ask for. Peace is not selfish. Needs are not weakness. Distance from harm is not failure. Choosing differently begins internally, long before it becomes visible externally. It begins with self-respect. And in that quiet self-respect, something inside you softens. Not toward the relationship, but toward yourself. If parts of this reflection felt familiar, if something quiet inside you was touched, know that staying does not make you weak. It makes you human. Umanjatak. Humans hope. Humans struggle to release what once felt meaningful. You are not alone in that experience. Many carry similar silent questions. Many wrestle with invisible doubts. Many are learning slowly what love truly requires. If you would like to stay connected to reflections like this, gentle explorations of the hidden corners of the human heart. You are welcome here. This is not just a channel. It is a space for emotional understanding, for quiet truths, for conversations that do not judge. And if you feel comfortable, you may share your thoughts in the comments. Not because you have to, but because your words might help someone else feel less alone. Or you can simply sit with what surfaced today. Both are enough. Take care of yourself.